Hi, my name is LHughes, and for our last week for IWU Finance through 15 Week 8, we will talk about equity financing for private companies. In this presentation, we will discover what is equity financing, sources of funding, securities evaluation, exiting an investment, and how equity financing applies in the professional world. When a business is started, the finances that help produce and support it are provided by an entrepreneur or sometimes an immediate family member, but is never usually enough to help support the business completely. In order for a business to grow, capital from outside sources are needed. Equity financing is essentially referring to the sale of an ownership interest to raise funds for business purposes. It can range from thousands of dollars from family and friends to billions from big name companies like Facebook and Google. These are usually considered initial public offering (IPO), which is the first time that the stock of a private company is offered to the public. Equity financing can also include financing by private companies as well. Equity financing involves not only common equity sales, but also sales of other equity, quasi-equity like preferred stock, convertible preferred stock, and equity units that include common shares and warrants. For a company to grow successfully, a startup will have several rounds of equity financing from different investors at many stages it goes through. There are many outside sources that private companies can choose from for equity capital: angel investors, venture capital firms, institutional investors, and corporate investors. Angel investors are people who buy equity in the small private firms. These are usually people that are friends or acquaintances to the businessmen. From investing such a large amount of capital to the business, they in return receive a generous equity share in the business in return. Usually, they have a substantial influence within the business. Venture capital firms are limited partnerships that specialize in raising money to invest in private equity of young firms. Pension funds, which are institutional investors, are limited partners within venture capital. The importance of the venture capital sector has grown enormously in the past 50 years, with especially helping invest in these young companies by a substantial amount. Institutional investors such as pensions, insurance companies, endowments, and foundations manage large quantities of money. They can invest directly in private firms or indirectly by being a limited partner in venture capital firms. A good example of this would be at the high school I work at. They have a PERF fund where private investors put money into a retirement fund for employees. Corporate investors that are more established look to invest in younger private companies. Corporate investors may have interest for corporate strategic objectives in addition to the desire for investment returns. When the founder of a business ends up wanting to sell equity to outside investors, common practice would be private companies issue preferred stock versus common stock to raise capital. Preferred stock issued by venture companies like banks has a preferential dividend and seniority in any liquidation. Preferred stock issued by young companies don't pay regular cash dividends. As time goes on, a business grows or declines, relationships change with firms and investors. It is important for investors to have a concrete strategy or plan on how they will eventually realize their return from their investment. This is called an exit strategy. There are two types that investors can do in order to do this: through an acquisition or a public offering. Big corps go after purchasing successful startups, and the acquired company purchases the outstanding stock of that private one so all investors can cash out. How equity financing applies in the professional world would be through a good example within the fashion industry. Entry-level professionals like a local fashion designer presents their line of clothing. A mid-level professional like department stores and boutiques look to carry that line in order to support the fashion designer. At the executive level, social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook help support not only the local designer but the department stores to help advertise that local brand in order to bring more awareness and funds to that and profits to that business. Another way for executive level would be through celebrities being able to promote that line through endorsements. In terms of ethics, when it comes to equity financing, not only is being open and honest with your partners important, but not keeping out any details on where all their money is going to in business plans with the people that invest in your business is important so nothing downfalls to where if they were to back you up, you weren't going to be able to help support your business still. 1 Corinthians 1:10 applies well to this topic. I appeal to you, brothers, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be united in the same mind and the same judgment. This concludes my presentation on equity financing. I just want to thank you for joining me these past 8 weeks, and I really appreciate you listening in. Have a good one.